at all. I'm much faster than you. They kept on going about this, but then they decided to have a contest. They decided that the next time a rabbit comes, we'll chase the rabbit, and whoever catches the rabbit, well, that will be the winner as to who's be the faster. So they sit and they're waiting, and then, sure enough, through the morning mist, a jackrabbit starts hopping around, and off they go. The game is afoot. They're chasing after this jackrabbit. The jackrabbit's weaving and darting about. One dog passes the other, and then the other dog passes the other. One came very close to the rabbit and took a bite of it, but just got some fur off of its little cottontail, but didn't get the rabbit. The other one had it cornered, but still the rabbit managed to escape. Still, off they went, the rabbit zigging and zagging, and after a while, the two dogs just looked at each other and said, you know, this is too much work. And so they decided to just stop. Well, watching them was an elder of the pack. And the elder says, what were you two doing? Well, we were having a contest really to see who was the faster. We were chasing this rabbit. Oh, a contest. So it was like a sporting event. It was entertainment to you. And they're like, yeah, I guess so. Well, do you know why you didn't catch the rabbit? The two dogs were like, well, I guess the rabbit was actually faster than both of us. And they laughed. And the elder laughed too. But the elder also shook his head and said, you know, the rabbit's not faster than you. The reason that you did not catch the rabbit is that you were not committed, because you ran for fun, you ran for sport, you ran for entertainment, but that rabbit ran for his life. So I ask you, he said to the two dogs, reflect upon the things that you do in your life. There's nothing wrong with sport and entertainment. But you should keep in mind the things that you do for sport and entertainment. And keep in mind the things that you do for your very life.
Now is the time in our service when the love that binds us together is spoken aloud. Within the loving community of this congregation, we take time to share with one another our joys and sorrows. If you are so moved, please feel free to come forward, drop a pebble in the bowl of water, and express your joy or your sorrow or concern. And for those of you who may be attending via our live stream, if you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share this morning, please type it in the chat.
First, it's an older sorrow, but it still feels very fresh. Some of you may remember him, but my dog Dante passed away in September. He had just made it to his 13th birthday. And then I have a joy. I have, for the first time in my life, officially enrolled into college, and I start my classes in January.
I'm Randy Blosh. I have a couple because I wasn't here last week. The first one is a sorrow. My daughter-in-law let me know this morning that her cousins lost everything in the tornado in Kentucky. They're all fine, everybody's alive, but they've lost everything. And so this is for Allison's cousins, and everyone in Kentucky and Arkansas and Illinois and Tennessee who suffered this last weekend. This is a joy that this coming Thursday, bright and early, I will be getting on an airplane to go to Hawaii to see my grandsons, who I haven't seen for 2 years, and one that I've never seen at all. Another joy that another semester is finished in Meadville. I literally have 3 classes left to take, and then 2 years of internship. So this is, I'm really doing this. That's the thing. And lastly, I got to go for Thanksgiving to see my parents. We moved my parents to Richmond, Virginia recently. And I was worried about my dad because he's very stubborn and didn't feel like he needed to move away from South Carolina. But they are happy and they're together and my sister's there and I'm just thrilled. So.
Hello, I'm Sue Greenspan. Hold on a second, sorry. I wrote this down actually so that I wouldn't win the award for the lengthiest joy in the history of Unitarianism, but I'll probably still receive a blue ribbon. I've been dealing with pretty significant depression for about the last 9 months, and the causes are chemical, the pandemic, feeling lonely, and good old menopause, which has been kicking my butt. But this is a joy because the last week, all of that seems to be lifting. And I feel like me again, and I really lost myself, and it's a really big deal. So, my second joy. I was adopted when I was 8 days old, and my birth mother got in touch with me via letters when I was about 19, and this month I'll be 54, so a while ago. She lived a very difficult, very sad existence, and in 1999, she took her life. I never met her or even spoke with her, but for over a decade, well over a decade, I've wanted to know a lot more about her. Well, last week, I finally pulled the trigger, and I reached out to a contact I had, and I talked to a good friend of hers for over an hour. And I feel like for the first time, I've gotten the closure I really needed around this, and I feel like a very heavy weight has been lifted that I had no idea was sitting so heavily on me. And my third and final joy, I promise. Through DNA testing a few years ago, I matched with a biological cousin on my birth father's side. My birth father doesn't want anything to do with me, which is perfectly fine. I had a wonderful father. But a year ago, I got in touch with my half-brother, Ben, and we text almost every week and speak on the phone, but I've never met him. Well, his girlfriend got a huge job here on a TV show and has been staying with me for the last week, and she's going to be with me another week. And it's not the same as meeting Ben, but it's amazing to have her here. We get along famously. And this trip will likely open up Ben and myself meeting sooner than later.
Good morning. I'm Miriam Patanian, and I have a joy, and that is that my in-laws, so John's parents, are flying down on Thursday. We are not going to Hawaii, so I won't get to see Randy there, but they are moving temporarily into our house with us for 3.5 months. And I am calling this a joy because we've been very concerned, particularly about my father-in-law from afar, and now we'll be able to care for him and oversee his dialysis and other care, and also help take care of my mother-in-law, who's been shouldering this burden all alone.
A final pebble for the health of our staff, Alex Peach and Ayana Kafi.
And now I'll drop a pebble for all those joys and concerns still too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. May we keep one another in our hearts for the coming week.
And then there were 7. When the Unitarians and the Universalists merged in 1961 to become one denomination, they painstakingly hammered out 6 principles. Really, only 4 of them were kind of moral and ethical principles. You see, one of them was really outlined the purpose of the denomination. It stated that the members of the Unitarian Universalist Association unite in seeking to serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. Another one of the original 6 principles acknowledged the 2 Unitarian Universalist sources. It stated that Unitarian Universalists cherish and spread the universal truths taught by great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. So again, there were 6 principles, but 2 of them were really not really moral and ethical principles. And this second one outlined the 2 sources of Unitarian Universalism: prophetic voices and Judeo-Christian heritage. Now in the 1970s, and as a matter of justice, the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation sought to change the principles to remove some of the sexist language. Among the principles, as I said before, love to God and love to man was in there. The dignity of man was in there. Ideals of brotherhood. To encourage cooperation of men of goodwill. So they led the way, the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation, towards revising the principles. This is the late 70s and early 80s. And they received resistance from all sides, not just from a mostly male clergy, but also from women. Back then, Unitarian Universalists loved their 6 principles. Yet we, looking back, we can see the unacceptable language. We, looking back, can see that justice was served in the reforming of new principles. How might we react today, again as a matter of justice, towards others amongst us who may wish to update the current principles that we love now? Would those agitating for justice in our principles, would they be met with resistance on all sides? I don't know. Perhaps not, but it's something to think about as we approach that point, because it is coming. Well, a new set of principles, the ones that we currently have, were finally adopted at General Assembly in 1985. But rather than being rewritten, the original 6 were actually kind of split apart into 3 different parts and kind of wrapped in covenant language. One of the original principles that I mentioned earlier was completely removed and given its own section in the Unitarian Universalist bylaws. It reads, it's the purpose of the UUA. The Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its corporate powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. The primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregations, organize new congregations, and extend and strengthen Unitarian Universalist institutions and implement its principles, okay? That was originally like a principle. They removed it, and now it's part of the UUA bylaws. A second part of the original principles was also removed to become the sources of Unitarian Universalism. Initially, it just referred to, as I mentioned earlier, prophetic voices in a Judeo-Christian heritage. To this, 3 other sources were added: world religions, humanistic teachings, and the wisdom of lived everyday experience. In 1995, they added a 6th source of wisdom of earth-centered teachings. So in 1985, we had the purpose of the UUA, its 5 sources at the time, and completely rewritten 6 principles. And then what could only be described as a Unitarian Universalist miracle took place. On the floor of General Assembly, somebody gave words to our 7th principle. And the miracle is that it was immediately loved by all. There was no argument. There was no dissent. There was no modification. It was as if the clouds parted and the sunlight burst forth to enlighten the General Assembly. It was as if these words were felt by all. It was as if these words articulated a principle that always existed. And it was just a matter of time before somebody gave voice to them and articulated them. Or maybe everybody at the plenary session was just simply too tired to argue about it any further. I was not there. But regardless of how it took place, on the floor of the General Assembly, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part was added as a principle. And then there were 7. What is significant about our 7th principle is not just what it says, but what it says in context to the other principles. In our other principles, we have the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all meaning people. Yes, in light of this, our 7th principle, it speaks for the trees. It's like our Lorax, to quote Dr. Seuss. Our 7th principle speaks for the trees in nature. It gives voice to a voiceless natural world. Well, actually, not a voiceless natural world, but a natural world to which we apparently no longer know how to listen. A natural world from which we are increasingly disconnected. The 7th principle pulls us out of our human-created, human-centered cosmos and reorients us into an interdependent, interconnected, more than human cosmos. A cosmos where the gravitational pull, the gravitational interconnection of the stars at the farthest reaches of the cosmos still reach out to us and pull on us in infinitesimal yet undeniable ways through gravity from the farthest reaches of the cosmos. Our seventh principle reminds us that we are bound up in a multi-dimensional web of relationships, not just with one another, but with all things. We are bound up with all things in this glorious, beautiful, blessed, beloved, whirling mess, where everything is caught up in everything else, where everything is responsible for everything else, everything. And although it can be terrifying at times, to be caught up in and responsible for this blessed whirling mess, you can take comfort that you are a part of it, and that you are not alone, and that you can't not make a difference, and that it's good to be alive.
In an effort to fulfill and further the vision and mission of this congregation, we ask that our members and friends bring forth and share their many and varied gifts. And with this, we will now gratefully receive the offering using the Givelify app. I'd like to share a reading with you this morning by David Bumbaugh called The Heart of Our Faith for the 21st Century. The heart of faith for the 21st century, I am convinced, is suggested by the seventh principle. Hidden in this apparently uncomplicated, uncontroversial, innocuous statement is a radical theological position. The seventh principle calls us to reverence before the world, not some future world, but this miraculous world of our everyday experience. It challenges us to understand the world as reflexive and relational, rather than hierarchical. It bespeaks a world in which neither God nor humanity is at the center, in which the center is the void, the ever-fecund matrix out of which beings emerges. It calls us to trust the process, the creative, evolving, renewing, and redeeming process which brings us into being, which sustains us in being, and which transforms our being. It offers a vision of a world in which the holy, the sacred is incarnated in every moment, in every aspect of being, a world in which God is always fully present, and in which God is always fully at risk. And now let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Happy Celica to you all. And may our Unitarian Universalist principles guide you towards living our values, weaving our values into the very fabric of your life. Go in peace and enjoy your week.